Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome all members and guests to the June 11th, 2024 Special Council meeting and remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised, so please ensure your phones are on silent. Roll call. All members of council are present. Councillor Duthie is here. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. First and foremost, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Huffman, seconded by Councillor Vanadrischi. All in favor? Carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Today's special council meeting, I want to thank all of council for coming together a little bit early. I know we have a very busy day today, but as you all know, we are dealing with a pressing issue in Norfolk County and right now in the downtown Simcoe area. And I know that a lot of councillors have been reaching out to staff. There's been a lot of concern for members of the public who are living in an encampment. We've had some media coverage. We have had staff spending a considerable amount of time in that area as well. And I thought it was appropriate that we all come together and get some messaging out and educate ourselves, and then determine some next steps with regards to the vulnerable sector in our community. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our CAO and then to staff for some comments and a brief presentation, I believe.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and through you to council and the public. Homeless prevention is a multifaceted challenge that staff prioritize on a daily basis. However, the success of staff's efforts is highly dependent on individual acceptance, regular interaction, and building trust with the individuals, and a cooperative support from all agencies, levels of government, community partners, and residents. As you know, homelessness is not unique to Simcoe. It is a situation that is occurring in municipalities both large and small, both rural and urban, and around the world. And it's an issue that's not going to go away anytime soon. As part of my brief introductory overview, I'm going to do my best to speak in generalities and do my best not to contribute to any stereotypes. It's important because no two cases of homelessness are identical. Each individual experiencing homelessness has their own story and history that has contributed to the way they are and where they are today. I also want to remind people that the successes of staff's efforts are mostly invisible. All the individuals helped and successfully returned to a more productive way of life, and all of those who have been assisted to avoid homelessness will mostly go unnoticed because they could very well be your neighbor, a coworker, a family member. No one would suspect that someone who is fortunate to have a shelter over their head has actually conquered addiction and substance abuse, or is someone who has recovered from mental illness, or someone who's been able to overcome a disability, some bad luck, an accident, taking a prescription incorrectly, and are able to pay rent or buy a home or hold down a job, all assisted by the work of our staff and our community partners. Since approximately mid-May, many in the community have begun noticing and reporting that homelessness appears to be an issue that's rising in our community. Specifically, tents have been erected around Talbot Gardens in Simcoe. The stark visibility of the tents, less than desirable cleanliness, which encompasses significant waste and debris of all kinds, increased noise around the clock, and visible illegal drug use and used drug paraphernalia are being discarded all around the area, among other noted issues, has raised concerns by residential neighbors, businesses, and those traversing through the area. Before we start a review of the situation and discuss next steps, I want to point out that the situation is indeed not new. What is new is the openness and the location. Many of these individuals have been in this situation for a long time, and many others have been in similar situations over the past few years. What has actually changed at the moment is where the issue is very visible. Prior to the current issue at Talbot Gardens, similar conditions existed in various areas in and around Simcoe, but not necessarily within the clear view of the public. Staff have done and continue to do their very best to offer assistance, offer available shelter, provide alternative supports, and encourage possible acceptance of alternatives to the current situation that many of those most in need individuals require. We also continue to strive to find a balance to meet the needs of all in our community. Public safety and adherence to the law, doing our best to respect the interests of all residents and not putting one resident's interests above the rights of another is very important. However, the situation and a solution are complicated by the following matters. Number one, Norfolk cannot force or compel anyone to accept the assistance that is being offered. Number two, recent and evolving court rulings and case law appears to conclude that attempts to move individuals along may violate the rights and freedoms of those individuals. And number three, members of the public, thinking they are acting as good Samaritans, are actually making things more difficult for staff and resulting in counterproductive environments. I'm going to try to give a little bit more detail on each one of those points. Norfolk cannot compel anyone to accept assistance being offered. By law, everyone has the legally protected right to decide if they want help and the treatment being offered. The most effective means of helping someone is when the person has agreed to accept the help that is being offered. As a result, Norfolk would open itself to liability should we attempt to force anyone to accept the assistance that's being offered. Number two, case law. Based on recent judicial guidance, enforcement actions to evict individuals from Talbot Gardens or other areas may violate Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, specifically the right to shelter. The legal analysis at this point is evolving, understanding that no two cases are identical and each individual circumstance needs to be reviewed based on competing laws that might be in place. Moving forward to forcibly remove those at Talbot Gardens at this time may place Norfolk at the risk of litigation. And finally, members of the public. Members of the public claiming that they're working with Jesus to improve the lives of these individuals are often working at cross purposes with Norfolk. I'm convinced that Jesus would encourage all agencies and stakeholders to work together to improve the lives of those most in need, and that involves doing what we can to encourage and convince individuals to accept the assistance being offered and getting these individuals the help that they desperately need. What is clear is that higher orders of government must create policies, strategies, and funding that tackle the root cause of homelessness while providing assistance with the effects, which is what we are dealing with today and on a daily basis. With your permission, Madam Mayor, I'll ask that our GM of Health and Social Services provide some detailed information on assistance that's being offered, the work that staff are doing on a daily basis, and the ongoing challenges.
Thank you, CAO, Madam Mayor, and Council. Today I'm here speaking to you about our homeless prevention program, what's going on and where we're going. As you know, the individuals that are experiencing homelessness across our organization, across our community, are not the actual problem. They're the end result of a multitude and a much larger problem. So how did we get here? It is a misunderstood and highly stigmatized challenge. It is often seen as a personal failing needing a personal solution, when instead we need to think about this as a systemic issue that needs universal solutions. This exists not only in Simcoe, but across Norfolk County, across Ontario, and across Canada and the world. It is very resource intensive to provide services on an individual basis to each person facing homelessness. The causes: poverty, lack of physical health care and mental health support, the housing crisis that we're seeing, the full spectrum from rent geared to income all the way to affordable, attainable, and full market housing, and the overall economic increases across all basic needs of life: food, shelter, houses, utilities, communication, and transportation. So what does Haldeman Norfolk look like? We have over 100 names on our by name list. This is people that have consented to us putting them on a list saying that they're at risk or experiencing homelessness in order to ensure the services each of these individuals are receiving from all the community agencies. 84% of these people are on social assistance currently. Our housing wait list sits at over 400 households, individuals and families. That's up 67% in the last 5 years. The good news, if we want to talk about it, is 2023 to 2024, we had 83 households that went from homeless to housed. 22 households, unfortunately, went from housed to homeless. This is a dynamic situation that we face every day. Over the past year, we've had a 15% increase in Ontario Works recipients. Our wait list, as previously discussed when we were talking about housing, is 2 to 10 years at best when you're waiting for housing. Even our highest priorities are over a year wait time. 40% of the households that we are able to house off the centralized wait list are special priority, and 12% are seniors. That means a lot of our regular individual citizens are falling through the gap. CMHC released our average home price just recently, $676,000 for a home in Haldimand and Norfolk County. That's on par with Hamilton and Windsor. To deem this what we would say affordable, that means the combined household income would have to be over $208,000. One-bedroom rentals in our area have gone up to $1,190 a month. It was $882 a year ago. To compound all of this housing crisis, our available housing, all of the apartments, rentals, homes that we have on the market, 0.4% vacancy. This means we do not have housing. Our RGI level, or our rent geared to income, has not changed for more than 30 years. So what are we doing as a team? Like our CAO said, sometimes it is invisible. You may not see that everything that we are doing across our communities. In 2023-2024, our teams interacted and assisted with over 15,000 households across Haldimand and Norfolk counties. Our 4 main areas of focus: emergency housing options, the by name list management, eviction prevention, and community outreach and supports. The first of which, you're aware of some of the available emergency housing we have. The warming center we support all winter, the emergency housing program that we run. We also fund transitional and residential housing options, things through Indwell, Maple Lodge, other transitional housing and supportive housing across both counties. We are continue to assess any new emergency or transitional housing opportunities in Haldimand County and Norfolk County. The by name list is something legislated that was implemented a few years ago to enumerate, coordinate, and better case manage every individual on that list. As I said before, our current list is over 100 individuals. Our eviction prevention programming is probably something that no one realizes we're actually doing in the background to prevent homelessness. This is financial support that is coming from the province, the municipality, to provide rent arrears, utility arrears, eviction prevention resources, things like navigating through the system, identification cards, healthcare needs, applying for funding, tenant-landlord issues. It also encompasses our housing stability bank and allowances and supports to allow those that are housed precariously to remain housed. These initiatives alone support over 400 households in Haldimand and Norfolk County. Our community outreach and support services, it allows us to be out in the community talking to individuals, to live answer our intake lines and immediately provide service, to case manage and coordinate their needs. The management of some of these complex, vulnerable individuals need multi-system navigation through healthcare, through mental health, through addictions, through even social services. So it also allows us some overall program monitoring and evaluation of how are we doing, what data are we collecting, and what are those metrics that are telling us whether our program is making a difference or not. It encompasses food insecurity with the support of 12 different food banks and services across both counties, and it includes ongoing education and awareness. I can't even enumerate the amount of people that these community outreach and support services are touching across both of our counties. What else are we working on? As was presented to you, a Lighthouse Community Strategy, a community-based group dealing with drugs and alcohol in our community. We have started a community partners collaboration strategy for housing and homelessness. Our first meeting is this month. We are calling together all of our community agencies and allied service partners to try and optimize all of our resources together towards one goal. We and all of you have supported housing revitalization. All our available units in our community housing have been renovated and are back taking people off the wait list. We have pledged for new developments, Dunnville, Delhi, Port Dover. We've expanded our portfolios into more supportive transitional housing in different partnerships around our community. We continue to advocate, educate, bring awareness, and communicate this across our communities. These are some of the resources and skills that are available across our entire community. We recognize, even as a mighty team of 10 in our homeless prevention, we can't do this alone. We need to rely on those resources across our community, providing basic needs, healthcare, community supports, and life skills supports. So what are we required to do from the province? We, of course, have mandates as the service manager that is responsible for housing and homeless prevention. The by name list is one of those. Enumeration, it has to be updated regularly, and the system services that align to that list have to be reported on. The homeless prevention funding that was just increased last year, it's meant to be flexible, regionally specific, and prioritized based on the needs of the community at that time. We have a 10-year housing and homelessness plan. We are currently in year 9 of that plan and working with the ministry in order to get that on par and set new targets and new goals moving forward. In housing, that requires us to maintain the rent geared to income service level, do all of our mandatory reporting, and sustain those actions towards the federal and provincial housing initiatives and plans that keep changing on an annual basis. We do the centralized waitlist maintenance and management, and we provide management of all the housing providers for all of our community housing and social housing. So what is our current situation? Unfortunately, as we know, the lowest income earners have the least ability to be anywhere close to competitive in this housing market. Homelessness is the product of lack of housing, economy, and circumstances. The individuals we have talked about there is safety in numbers. We can share resources if we're all together, and we have better accesses to the services available. We know, unfortunately, there is an increased potential of criminal activity and incidents of violence, and it may include unsafe conditions for their health and well-being. Unfortunately, the skills and behaviors that individuals possess to survive homelessness and possibly these encampments are detrimental to remaining housed, even if we had housing available. These supports are needed long-term. While it may be, as our CAO said, relatively new to the more rural areas, encampments and homelessness have been a reality in our urban centers across the province for the past decade or more. The scale of our concerns may seem small at this point, but it is no less concerning. There have been many legal challenges on encampment dispersal and movement that have occurred over the past few years in cities and municipalities across Canada. So where do we go from here? What do we want to do? I would say that we want to recognize that homelessness is not the preferred solution for either the individual, the business community, or the general public. We want people to be safe and healthy. We want to lead the change. We want to bring the community together to address this issue with solutions. We have to have the courage to commit to this long term, and we need to hear their voices. The quote on that slide, "Nothing about us without us," means we need to engage people with lived and living experience and see what they need to ensure that the solutions that we're moving towards are effective and successful. So how do we get here? I'm going to give you a couple examples. So we can do a program evaluation that looks at all of our current and emerging service needs and opportunities. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And how can we change this moving forward? We need to look at a consolidated emergency shelter strategy in partnership with our community agencies. We need to increase our RGI levels. I'd prefer about 10% over the next 5 years in collaboration with the ministry. That puts us up an average of 65 to 70 new units. We need to build new affordable housing units and explore additional portable housing benefits to a total of 50 new over the next 5 years. And we need to create a community collaborative model to coordinate and integrate existing resources and assist in this long-term strategy, including having a voice in the 10-year housing and homelessness plan. This doesn't end here, and it's not all of your responsibility. Housing is a provincial mandate. Unfortunately, the pain and costs across society caused by lack of housing is felt locally. So what do we need the province to do? We need immediate increases to Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support payments that create realistic and viable incomes for the basic needs of life. We need increased ongoing support and supplements for RGI unit expansion, higher investment in primary care, emergency care, and mental health resources to improve access and availability. We need sustainable investment and collaborative efforts in addictions management, harm reduction, rehabilitation, and recovery. And significant investment in housing is needed. This is not a new concept and has been stated across the country. Specifically, we need to address lower income level affordability. And what are those costs? You can estimate for that every 20 units of affordable housing is about $5 million. And that's plus supports on top of that to ensure success. We know that this is not a problem that is going to be solved overnight or one that we can easily address. We know that the team is working hard on a daily basis and we will continue to do so. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation with a lot of really, really good information included. Are there questions? Councillor Duthie, then Vanandrishi and Barry.
Oh, you're first, okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to our CAO and our GM of Health and Social Services. I want to just maybe say, I realize that we're going to have some discussion around this today, and I want to predicate that based on the fact that this is a delicate issue in our community. I have certainly heard a great deal from members of our community, both residents, businesses, concerned individuals. I've been on the street and I've talked with a number of people as well. And certainly there is a lot being said and I'm hearing it all. But at the core of our discussion today, I'm really hoping that we can remember that we are talking about human beings. We are talking about people that are living in vulnerable, difficult situations, and that we treat them in their situations with kindness. I have heard stories while I have been out and talking to people of individuals in this community tormenting these people that are in vulnerable situations, throwing things at them, revving their engines in the Talbot Gardens parking lot, squealing tires to try and upset them. I think that we're better than that, and I would encourage and ask that our community refrain from that kind of behavior. The reality is that our current economic situation is that many Canadians are literally just a few missed paychecks away from being homeless. There's a study from 2023 that suggests that 52% of Canadians are $200 away or less from not being able to pay their bills at the end of this month. It's a scary situation and it is delicate and we have to be very careful, but please let's just remember that we're talking about humans. We're talking about people that are someone's children, someone's aunt or cousin or brother. I do want to also just note before we sort of get into the meat of it, a big thank you to our social services staff and our homelessness prevention program and Sarah for her leadership as well. And good Lord, she knows that I've called her a number of times over the last few weeks going, help me. But I know that they have really been out there and working and visiting these individuals daily. And that's really appreciated, as well as our partnership with Shauna from the OPP and our other community partners. Thank you for the work that you're doing on this situation. It's just my comments as the ward councillor that's fielding a lot of calls.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Appreciated. Councillor Vanandrishi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I too realize these are human beings and we have to tread lightly. But by the same token, we're doing a lot. What do you do, my question is, when you approach people that are, and they're living rough, and I totally get it, but there is drug use, there is drug sales, there is violence, there's all of this, and it's in a community where the people that live here have to see this and cope with it. What is the suggestion to do, like, do the police come and have to make arrests and things like this? Do they come out? And because I know there was violence there, I've read about it. But what do you do if nobody wants to accept the help that they're given?
Through the Mayor, Councillor Vanandrishi, You are correct. Everyone has their own individual right to refuse care and refuse assistance. We encourage anyone in the public that feels that their health and safety is threatened, or if there is illegal activity that they are witnessing, to call 911. We have had interactions with OPP, and we continue to work closely with our community officers. We're all heading down the same path. We're trying to get people safe and ensure that they have what they need to live.
If I may continue, where I'm getting the most of the calls is the fact that these are people saying, we do offer them services, we do offer them this, but they, and I agree, you're one paycheck from being those people, but, and we can't afford any more of our taxpayer dollars to be going out to more and more resources. I think the emphasis has to be on the province and the feds, even though at the end of the day, it's still one taxpayer. I'm disappointed. There's always been transients. Let's get that straight. There's always been transients, but there's always been opportunity. But when people don't take up the opportunities they're given, I don't mind a hand up, but I'm tired of giving a hand out. You just can't keep handing out and handing out. You want to offer them a hand up. And those, I encourage all those people in that condition to take advantage of these opportunities they have. Because, and I know you go out there and talk to them all the time, but I just don't like outside influences saying, don't move on or don't try to get help. That's wrong, and I've been hearing that as well. So I'm hoping that those people step away and let our people go in there and try to help these people. Hand up, and I'm all for that.
Councillor Berry?
I'm okay for now, actually. I've changed my mind. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it's been mentioned that the working person is one paycheck away from being homeless. There's something else that's happening in the community here in Norfolk with respect to the federal capital gains tax. A lot of landlords now are thinking about unloading their rental properties and to get away, because there's a certain cutoff date for that. So the other thing is that a lot of residents that are renting are having a difficult time meeting their rent obligations. And you will notice that there's a lot of properties that were put up for rent are going up for sale now, because the people that rent are one paycheck away from making their rent payment. I've been in touch with several people who are in this business, and some have been owed rent for 17 months. They've had to hire a lawyer to get, and they got to pay their taxes and their insurance and everything. And the utilities is another thing. That all adds up to this problem here. So, and another one is I've had seniors tell me they cannot afford to live anymore. It's not about being one paycheck away for the working person, but it's one monthly payment from the government for their seniors' pension. And you know, we're going to be discussing about a lot of money coming up in this council and committee meeting today, and hopefully we can say, hey, maybe we got to be more careful here on our expenses, because the taxes keep going up, water bills keep going up. That's my contribution. Thanks.
Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. And first off, I'd like to thank a big thank you to our staff and our collateral agencies within our community who are working tirelessly to help the individuals who are finding themselves in this precarious situation that no one, including themselves, wants to see themselves in. I will reiterate what a couple of my colleagues have said in regards to the general public being very in a precarious position in terms of losing their homes. And I don't mean homes in terms of just rental. There was a stat today on the news that 6 out of 10 Canadians are experiencing mortgage instability. So we're not just talking, we're talking across the gamut. So it certainly is important that we remember that we're needing to assist these individuals, and there are rights and responsibilities. I would be remiss to say that it does strike me as strange that this issue has been going on for quite a number of years, and now it is in the quote-unquote forefront of our public. I was very disappointed to find an individual in the community who used to sit around this table, instead of coming to council, making a deputation, providing some solutions, that they just chose to go to the public, to the paper, and that the paper really didn't do any due diligence in terms of speaking with our staff as well. So I should apologize. I'll retract that last statement. So it is difficult for individuals to realize that this has been going on in our community for a number of years. Our groups have been working very hard. When you don't have the social determinants of health, it's very difficult to put that first step in front. You're dealing with mental health, you're dealing with homelessness, you're dealing with possible drug addiction, you're dealing with food insecurity, you're dealing with not having a safety net. Many of us may have a safety net, and that's why the individuals involved have spoken about security in numbers. I do want to continue to ensure that the police do their due diligence with any illegal activity that is occurring, as it is not a safe environment for anybody. So all in all, our province needs to step up to the plate. We need to house, as it's been mentioned, housing is a provincial mandate, and we are requiring increases in our ODSP, our OW, and our RGI. And hopefully our community can make a pitch to the province, and we can get some forward progress made. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Breton.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I have a couple of questions, and I want to echo what my colleague Columbus said. Being a landlord isn't easy. There are a lot of bills, and things just keep going up. And that's why rent keeps going up. Mortgages, utility bills, you name it. I don't have the answers, but I do have a question, and I guess this would be to Sarah. Sarah, and I apologize for having my back to you, Sarah, but is these people, I am assuming you've talked to them on over at Talbot Gardens, are they all on some form of social assistance?
Thank you, and through the mayor to Councillor Brunton. Of all of the ones that are on our by name list, approximately 85% of them are in social assistance, some form, either OW or ODSP.
Okay, and is that money, I assume it's paid monthly or whatever, but is it monitored as to where it goes? Or do they just get a check and we don't know any more about it? How is that monitored?
Madam Mayor, through you to Councillor Brenton, Ms. Page has referred this question to me. So for an Ontario Works or an Ontario Disability Support Program check, there are two components of the check. One is a shelter component and one is a basic needs component. If someone is homeless, they are still eligible for the basic needs component, and people have the right and the ability to spend their basic needs funds as they need to and as they determine that they need to. There are checks and balances for the shelter portion. People have to show that they have an address and they have a mortgage payment or a rent payment that they have to make in order to be eligible for the shelter portion. People have the right to determine how they spend their basic needs.
Okay, can I ask you then, like the people that are over on Talbot Street, they are receiving a portion of their assistance for lodging? Am I correct? No? Yes or no?
Madam Mayor,
No.
through you to Councillor Brunton, first of all, let me be clear that neither Ms. Page nor I nor any staff in the room can speak specifically about individuals who are living in a specific location because of their right to maintain privacy of their information. So what I can say in general is that if a person is homeless, they would be eligible for the basic needs component of Ontario Works or ODSP. You must have an address confirmed by a rental agreement or a mortgage to be eligible for a shelter component.
Okay, so we really, I guess the only way you're going to is to monitor. Do these people go in monthly and have, like, are they interviewed monthly or evaluated monthly? How does that work?
So, Madam Mayor, through you to council, each recipient of OW or ODSP has a case manager, and our more vulnerable residents also have community support workers. And so there are specific intervals. There is regular communication between staff and individuals. There are certain intervals at which people are required to report to the office for work on a life stability plan with their case manager. That is a requirement of the program.
Okay, and my last question is, do we have this same problem in Delhi, Waterford, Dover, to any extent, or is it predominantly right here in Simcoe?
Through the mayor to Councillor Brunton, I will say yes and no. It is visible right now in Simcoe. It is experienced across many different communities in Haldimand and Norfolk. However, Simcoe is the hub for a great many of services, and that includes our offices, most medical, things like that they're accessing, and location matters. If you don't have accessibility to transportation, then it's important to stay where your services are.
Okay, the reason I asked that, I know there's a few other camps on the trail and on the highway by Tim Hortons, but I just wondered how many are, say, in Port Dover or Delhi. Do we have any large amounts, or can't you speak to that?
Through the mayor, Councillor Brunton, I would say it's very few that are external to the Simcoe and general area.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions for staff as well. So right now, so that the public is aware and council is aware, there are daily supports being offered to these individuals, certainly in that particular encampment, but of course across Norfolk County and other areas in Simcoe. And whether those services are directly related to housing is irrelevant. There are services being provided, correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes. There's multiple services provided on a spectrum of different availability, whether that's healthcare, social services, identification, financing, clothing, food. All of those services are provided on a daily basis.
Okay, and further to that, Norfolk County did not provide these individuals with tents.
Through you, Madam Mayor, back to the mayor. That is correct. We have not provided the tents, mattresses, chairs, anything that is out there. We're providing basic daily needs as required.
Okay, can you elaborate on what the role of the OPP has been to date and when they should be engaged?
Through you, Madam Mayor, back to the mayor, yes. So OPP has a very strong community officer that has been engaged with our teams for several years. They also have specialists on their platoons that are making rounds of people that are living rough in our community, be that on the trails or at Talbot Gardens. And part of that is to assist with system navigation. Some are facing some justice system issues. Some are facing addictions, mental health, things like that. And so it is very much a collaborative effort that we are putting forth to do everything that we can to support people in need. I will say that the OPP in general have been very responsive. If there has been emergency need of either violence or illegal activity, they have been very responsive to people's calls and are doing the best we can to provide a safe environment for not only the individuals living there, but for our general public.
Okay, thank you. The $4 million that we receive from the province in our homelessness prevention funding, can you talk about what that's being used on? You've touched on it already, but specifically the provincial dollars we've received, demonstrate how far that's going and what we do with it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the entire total is $3.6 million a year that comes from the province. It is 100% funded from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. That goes towards our 10 staff members doing this work every day. But the greatest proportion is not only in supporting the households that in order to prevent homelessness, but supporting many initiatives across our community. So that funds the emergency housing, that funds our warming center, that funds different partnerships with places like Maple Lodge, Indwell, some of the places in Haldeman that we fund as well to have supportive housing in place across the spectrum of different housing needs. And we also support things like having rent supplements and the utility arrears and things like that. So all of that conglomerate, none of that is for capital, so none of that goes towards actually building houses. That is just supporting people to either remain housed or supporting people that are unhoused at this point.
Okay, thank you. So none of those provincial dollars, one, is intended to be used for capital, and two, even if we could, we're not, because we're using it on individuals and staff and programs and services and retaining people in their homes so that we're not being reactive to additional individuals on a by name list. My last question for you is, can you specify, although we are in council, we're not in Board of Health right now, your role between Haldeman and Norfolk? Like, you are working on one of many encampments right now, and so from a resource perspective, we have 10 staff members and yourself. It's clearly not enough for us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's correct. We have a current encampment in Hagersville as well, as well as several homeless individuals across the Dunnville area and other areas in Haldeman that we are working closely with all of our staff. The statistics that we have told you today about households being supported and food banks being supported is across both counties, and the team does their best to manage that across both counties. The presentation from today will be passed on to Haldeman County, and I will be happy to go to their council and present as well, so they have the opportunity. I know that it is also in their media recently due to some of the encampments that have been in the public eye over the last week or so. And so we keep working and keep the path moving forward, and whether that is baby steps a day or huge leaps is dependent on the support needed and the support that we're able to provide. I think that we really need to focus on a preventative measure. We need to get housing. We need to get the supports in place for people to be successfully housed long term. And so that working with councils and advocating to the province becomes our strongest pathway to get that accomplished.
Okay, my last two questions for you are also for members of council and for the public. So one, although it doesn't matter because it is a Norfolk County issue, I have heard and been told, and I'm wondering if you have heard the same thing and can verify or debunk this, that these are not necessarily Norfolk County individuals. They're here from other communities. Is this something that you and our staff are hearing, and is there any information you can share about that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will say that the majority of individuals that we have in our service provision portfolio are from Haldeman and Norfolk counties. There are likely 10 to 15% of individuals that are more transient, that are coming in from cities or moving around the province. We have assisted individuals in the past that have stated that they have housing elsewhere and somehow ended up in Norfolk County to get back to where they have their services in place or their support systems in place. But we don't condone any movement of individuals in or out of an area solely due to homelessness. We, are trying to take care of our community members, our sisters, our aunts, uncles, our friends that are in the community and focus our efforts there.
Okay, and then my last question, how can the public help? Obviously, people are very concerned about this situation. There have been very generous acts towards these individuals. However, in my opinion, the donation of tents, regular drop-off of food and clothing, it doesn't encourage these individuals to lean into the existing supports we have, and it becomes almost cyclical, where we're not ending the problem or solving the problem or chipping away at the problem. So what is the best way that the public can support this while we're developing a plan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, I would encourage the public to support the agencies that are out there on the front line doing the work every day. While we can see the 5 or 7 tents at Talbot, this is a much larger problem. And so by supporting Things like the Salvation Army, our local food banks, Church Out Serving, St. Vincent de Paul, all of the community organizations, service clubs, all of your donations that go there are spanning a much greater population in need across our community. And so we would encourage that those pathways be the best way to move forward.
Okay, thank you for all of that information. I guess I would just say, it's of high concern for council and staff. Thank you, staff, for all the work that you have been doing. We obviously know that something needs to be done here, and the community's looking at us to do it, but the reality is that this is not the municipal taxpayers' responsibility to provide all of these services and be reactive. We need some support and we need some help to get a plan rolling, but we are not unique to a lot of other municipalities. And unfortunately, this is now becoming a rural community issue. So I do have a motion to send some direction to staff. If Deputy Mayor Van Passen would switch the chair with me, I could table a motion for council's consideration.
That would be your prerogative, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I've just sent it to Tracy. If we can get it up on the screen to help council members, but it is based on the presentation that I just heard, and I was rapid fire putting it all together here. So staff, please correct me if did you get it? Yeah. Okay. If there are any errors, if we could load that up on the screen, I can begin to read it. Do you want me to turn it over? Sure. Thank you. Whereas homelessness and concerning associated factors are on the rise, and whereas contributing factors include poverty, mental health issues, housing crisis factors, substance abuse issues, food, utility, rental, and other financial increases, and more, which are not municipal issues, and whereas Haldimand and Norfolk counties have a 2 to 10 year wait list for rent geared to income housing, and whereas Haldimand Norfolk has completed a 10-year housing and homeless prevention plan, and whereas Norfolk County has a 0.4% rental vacancy, and the average rental rate jumped from $882 a month to $1,100 a month this year alone. And whereas Norfolk County has over 100 individuals on a by name list, and of that, 84% of those individuals are on social assistance, which is up 67% overall in the last 5 years. And whereas homeless prevention services staff have connected with over 15,000 households over the last year, and whereas the homeless prevention service team of 10 focused on homelessness prevention is focused on emergency housing, eviction prevention, community outreach, and supports. And sorry, I've got a line there. There was a fourth service you mentioned, but I didn't get it in my notes.
My apologies, Madam Mayor, the by name list management.
And by name list management, thank you. And whereas the eviction prevention program has assisted 400 households on rent and utility arrears, and whereas Norfolk County only has 7-day emergency beds available, and whereas Norfolk County does not have the financial support or resources to tackle these provincial mandates, and whereas current case law exists that may not allow for municipalities to move encampments without providing additional housing first under certain circumstances, and whereas Norfolk County municipal taxpayer is not equipped and cannot afford to take on this initiative, therefore be it resolved that staff develop a plan that outlines all resources required to house all individuals on the by name list, giving consideration to staffing, additional required amenities, and assume projected numbers by the time construction is completed, and that staff produce a business case on the efforts and investments made by Norfolk County, Haldimand Norfolk Health and Social Services, and Haldimand Norfolk Housing Corp., and other community housing providers as demonstrated today, as well as lobbying suggestions such as increases to OW, RGI, and housing initiatives. And further that until such time that report is completed, Norfolk County Council engage MPP Brady to lobby the province to support rural municipalities on these provincial issues. And all of that's to say, I don't want the number because I think that council should be considering building any assets. That's not where I'm going at all. The municipal taxpayer cannot afford that. But I do want a dollar figure to go to the province with and say, this is how many beds we would need tomorrow to clean up encampments and concerns and growing by name list and so on and so forth. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Madam Mayor, so the mayor has put that motion on the floor. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Huffman? Any discussion? Clarification from staff?
Through you, the chair. The part of the motion that says 7-day stay in our emergency housing program, there is actually no limit on the length of stay. So the emergency beds available, we have 14 beds 14 rooms with 16 beds that are available, and that is unlimited stay in our emergency housing.
So actually, that's just semantics on what you call them. We have 14 spaces available, or 16 spaces available, and we have to give it a name somehow, right? So, Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Van Passen. I just wanted to add ODSP in there. We had OWRGI. Just want to make sure ODSP is recognized as well. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Columbus.
And that is just Norfolk County that we're talking about here?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, that is both counties. It is located in Jarvis, but those emergency beds, the 16 beds that we have, are Haldeman and Norfolk beds.
Well, us staff or the mayor, we are sitting as council, but we also sit as the Board of Health. Is there room in that motion to either make note of the fact that it's, as the Board of Health, we're joint with Haldeman, or should we circulate this to get a similar motion, ask Haldeman if they would endorse a similar motion?
Through the chair to Madam Mayor, no, that's a great idea. I'll circulate the same motion with the presentation.
Any other comments, questions? So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? That motion is carried. And I will return the chair back to the mayor.
Thank you very much. A little practice for you before we switch over to council at 1, or council and committee. Okay, with that, we have nothing else on the agenda, so we have a confirming bylaw, and I'm looking for a motion to approve bylaw 2024-56, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council at the special council meeting held June 11th, 2024, moved by Councillor Duthie, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All in favor? And Councillor Huffman at 12:51 moves for adjournment, seconded by Councillor Michelli. All in favor? That is carried. Let's recess until 1 o'clock proper for our council and committee meeting, and give staff time to change our links over and change the chair with the deputy mayor. Thanks, everyone.